Hello and welcome to Eye on Africa. These are the main headlines from across the continent this hour. A day after Robert Mugabe finally bowed into pressure and resigned, Zimbabwe is still in celebration. Emmerson Mnangagwa has touched down back in the country before he's sworn in this Friday as the new president. It's a global problem that's hit Africa especially hard. We look at what's being done to eradicate female genital mutilation as experts from UNICEF and the Fondation Espoir meet here in Paris to discuss that issue. And the French president calls for an emergency UN Security Council meeting over reports of a slave trade on Libyan soil. This as those African nationals who've managed to escape such markets land back home. Zimbabweans have spent their first day in 37 years without Robert Mugabe as president. Celebrations have broken out following news of his resignation. Emmerson Mnangagwa, the man who Mugabe sacked as his vice president, sparking the military takeover, has now returned to his homeland to be sworn in as the new leader this Friday. He says he's been in constant contact with Zimbabwe's army over the past tumultuous weeks. This next report takes a closer look at the role the army has played in this handover of power.
Armed soldiers in Harare are today part of the landscape, and even though they seem very relaxed, people wonder how long they will stay.
They should go back to the barracks just because they saved us. They did their part.
We have seen them as villains before, but I'd like to believe you see them as heroes. If you look at the reaction of the masses in Harare, we now see them as heroes. And I would like to believe they should take that credit and behave in a humanly manner.
The irony is that it's Mugabe's faithful army that has played a major role in his stepping down. But nobody knows if the same military will protect the people tomorrow. It's clear that the future president has used the military to his own benefit. For civil society, the struggle must go on, so that this change of guard will lead to a true democracy.
Yeah, we are uncomfortable. I am totally uncomfortable with the involvement of the army in predetermining who should be the leader of this country and things. That's not their role. And when you read the Constitution of Zimbabwe, it's very clear about that.
Only history will tell if General Chiwenga, who seized power last week, will respect the Constitution as he stated. His declarations on TV are sometimes ambiguous.
We further appeal to everyone to avoid the abuse of social media or any other platforms to inflame feelings or incite public disorder in the country.
Zimbabweans are not fooled. They know that if they have shown their anger or expressed their joy in the last few days, it is because they were allowed to.
Moving on, the World Health Organization estimates that over 200 million women have undergone genital mutilation, the majority of them before they reach the age of 15, as well as the Middle East and Asia. The practice chiefly takes place in Africa, with the highest number of cases reported in Ethiopia. The UN's children's agency, UNICEF, along with the Fondation Espoir, have been working tirelessly to try and buck this rather worrying trend. Joining me here on set now is Dr. Mariam Silla, a specialist in women's health who works as part of that programme. Thank you very much for being with us here on France 24.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much. First of all, can you paint our viewers a picture of just how widespread female genital mutilation is in Ethiopia?
The most recent demographic health survey has shown that the prevalence among women aged from 15 to 49 is 65%. However, that trend is going downward. The DHS from the demographic health survey from 2005, it was at 71%. The one prior to that, around 2000, was at 80%. Even though it's still at 65%, we are seeing a downward trend in the recent years.
Now, along with the Ethiopian government, you're trying to eradicate this practice by the year 2025. What exactly are you trying to do, or what's in place to try and stamp out this practice?
Let me first of all acknowledge here the leadership of the government of Ethiopia in making that commitment to end harmful trade practices, including child marriage and FGMC by 2025. UNICEF, along other partners, including the Fondation Espoir, is supporting the government to define innovative strategies and strategies that can be implemented at scale. So we've been working with the government to implement preventive measures, working with the religious leaders, clinic leaders in areas where the practice is widespread. In Somali region and Afar region of Ethiopia, we have mobilized more than 20,000 community leaders, and 800 community leaders has committed not to cut their daughters. In addition to the prevention side, we have recruited 8 gynecologists that we have that are now working in the regional hospitals in Afar and Somali to treat the complications of FGMC. The good thing about that, we are strongly linking the treatment to the prevention side. Women that have gone on the treatment have now become strong advocates and ambassadors of ending these harmful practices in the regions.
And what problems or hurdles have you come across in your work so far?
You know, it's related to social norms. Changing social norms takes times, but at least we are getting there slowly but surely. Community are mobilized. It's social norm, but also means we need more support to mobilize more resources. The government has committed to provide 10% of budget to do that, but it's not enough. So we need to continue mobilizing more resources. And I would like here to thank the Fondation Espoir of having provided seed money to implement some innovative strategies that the government can take at scale in Ethiopia.
And what is your message to other African nations and to the international community at large this hour here on France 24?
Strong leadership from the government in terms of mobilizing, coordinating actions, but also innovative approaches to test more and to make sure that these social norms are tackled as widely as possible.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mariam Silla, for that insight. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much. Moving on, after meeting with the head of the African Union at the Elysee this Wednesday, the French President Emmanuel Macron has called for an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council to discuss claims of a slave trade in Libya. Those who've managed to escape such slave markets have been describing the horrors they've witnessed. A plane chartered by the International Organization for Migration, carrying around 250 Cameroonian migrants, touched down in Yaoundé on Tuesday. Our team has sent this report.
After spending years detained in Libya, these Cameroonian migrants have tasted freedom for the first time. But they still bear visible scars of the torture that many of them suffered, like Jean, who was struck with an iron bar by his captors.
Look at my head. You'll see the scar. That's where they hit me with an iron rod.
Having left Cameroon 8 months ago with the dream of arriving in Europe via the Mediterranean, Jean came to be a victim of a well-organized human trafficking syndicate in Libya. He says he was sold 4 times and that slave traders bought him for between 400 and 500 euros.
He took me and he went to sell me in another part of town. We were brought to Brac to work. We were slaves to a whole neighborhood. They didn't ask us whether we were hungry or thirsty. They didn't ask us anything. When we would remove weeds in peanut fields, we worked without getting up. 2 people died right in front of me. The captors would hit someone, the person would cry out, and then they would die.
These terrible living conditions convinced Jean and 249 other Cameroonian migrants to leave Libya. They returned to Yaoundé on Tuesday night by a special flight chartered by the government and the International Organization for Migration. After touching down, they are still haunted by the nightmare of having lost everything in Libya. This father's relieved to return to Cameroon with his family after having paid a $6,000 ransom. Other migrants have not been so lucky and are still being held hostage in detention centers.
We have brothers who are still imprisoned over there. When they kidnap you, they beat you and torture you. If we hadn't given them money, they would have cut us up and left us in the desert.
This migrant is one of more than 100 women who was captured pregnant. She was saved after her family paid a ransom. According to her, captors are more violent with the darker-skinned migrants.
Black skin is a commodity in Libya. We're sold at cheap prices like chickens. I was sold, and I was still pregnant at the time. I was sold for around 1 million CFA francs. If I'd given birth in prison, I would have been sold for 1.5 million.
Hundreds of Cameroonians are still in Libya, and according to the UN, nearly 390,000 migrants from 40 different countries remain trapped there.
That's all from me and the rest of the Africa News team. Do stay with us here on France 24 for more world news and headlines that are coming right up.